This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. Bruchim Abam to the Kollel Agar the Pirka here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. Parshas Vayishlach. So we have a very interesting episode here, one of the interesting episodes in the Torah, where Yaakov already had the Yud Beis Shiftei Ka, and the Pasuk says, Vayihi b'shkoin Yisrael ba'aretz hahi, and it was when Yisrael was residing in that land, Vayilech Reuven, and Reuven went, Vayishkav es Bilhah, he lay with Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv, the concubine of his father. Vayishma Yisrael, and Yisrael heard. Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov shnei masar, and there were 12 sons of Yaakov. So the first question is, we know there are 12 sons of Yaakov. You know, Good Morning America, there are 12 sons of Yaakov. Everybody knows there are 12 sons of Yaakov. We know how to count. Parshas Vayetze, he had the 12 sons. So why does the Torah have to say there are 12 sons of Yaakov? Number two, this is there's a very unusual phenomenon in this pasuk, and that is there's a piska, there's an empty space in the middle of the pasuk, which is quite an unusual phenomenon. Usually if there would be an empty space, it's a different Parsha, by the way. It's a different Parsha, but it's the same pasuk. Usually if you have a space, that means it's a different Parsha. It's the only time you have a Parsha in the middle of the pasuk. So if you're having a space already, you might as well call it quits to the pasuk. No. In the middle of the pasuk, you have a piska be'emtza the pasuk. Haloi davarhu, what's the reason over here? Why is there an empty space in the middle of the pasuk? And this is a question raised by the Ben Ish Chai in the Shalos Tshuvas Rav Pa'alim. We know the Ben Ish Chai was a prolific writer. He wrote more than 100 svarim, many svarim on drush, many svarim on halacha. These are his Shalos Tshuvas Rav Pa'alim. He says, Yesh piska b'toich ha'pasuk, sha'oisa sham parsha acheres, yilamdeinu ma tam yesh b'piska zu. Please teach us, what's the reason for this space in the pasuk? Okay, now this story was what we refer to as the Mice Oruvane. The literal meaning of the pasuk is, Yaakov was living in that land, Reuven went, and it says he had relation with Bilhah, the concubine of his father. Seems like something very bad. And the Gemara says in Megillah, it's a Mishnah Megillah Daf Chafei, Maser Reuven Nikra V'loi Metargim. This story, we read it, we don't say the Targum on the pasuk. What does that mean we don't say the Targum? In the olden days, when the Balkari would lay in the pasuk, there would be a Metargim who would say after him, the Targum, we omit the pasuk. You know, when it comes to this pasuk, we whitewash it, we throw it under the rug. What was that? What did you just slain? You must have missed it. You know, we don't explain what happened. Rashi says, Maser Reuven. What does it mean, the Maser Reuven? Which story? It says Rashi, the story of Vayishkav es Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv, Nikra b'beis hakneses. We read it. V'lei metargim. Chashinan l'gnusa. We're worried about Reuven's gnus. We don't want to disparage him. We don't want to embarrass him. And therefore we do not explain the pasuk of Vayishkav es Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv. So let's look at the Targum. What exactly is so disparaging about what the Targum says? Take a look. Says Targum, it was when Yaakov lived in that land, Va'azal Reuven, and Reuven went, Ushechiv in Bilhah, and he lay with Bilhah, L'cheinasa Davui, the concubine of his father, Ushema Yisrael, and Yaakov heard, V'hava b'nei Yaakov, Trei Asar. And there were 12 sons of Yaakov. So what exactly is the Targum saying? The Targum doesn't say anything bad. The Targum translates the words of the pasuk, you know. Why would we not say the Targum? I think most people, the purpose of the Targum is to be mevayer, not to translate. I think everybody knows that Vayishkav es Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv is exactly what Targum says. Why do we need to hide the Targum? Why do we need to hide the Targum? So the question is, what really did Reuven do? What exactly was his sin? Do we take the pasuk literally? So Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos on Daf Nun Hey Amud, look at number 6. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmeni Amar Rabbi Yonasan, Kol ha'omer Reuven chata eino elataya. Anyone who says that Reuven sinned is making a mistake. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov shnei masar. There were 12 sons of Yaakov. Melamed, it teaches you shekulam shkulan ka'achas, they're all equal. The Maharsha explains like this. The Marsha says that really, Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar is going on the next episode. Really, it's not part of the previous mentioned idea. If you look in Vayishlach, Lamed Vav, Chav Beis, really, Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar is the next idea. It's like this. Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar. It's Parak Lamed Hey, Parak Pasuk Chav. It's Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar, b'nei Leah, b'char Yaakov, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zebulun, b'nei Rachel, Yosef, Binyamin, b'nei Bilhah, Shevchas, Rachel. In other words, Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar is going on the next passage in the Chumash. Why would we, if there's a piska in the middle of the pasuk, why would we keep Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov as part of the previous pasuk? The Marsha says to teach you that even though Vayishkav es Bilhah and Vayishma Yisrael, nevertheless, Reuven didn't do anything wrong. Really, the same way Shimon didn't do. What was Shimon's role with Bilhah? Nothing. What was Levi's role? What was Yosef's role? They didn't do anything. So too, Reuven didn't do anything. And that's indicated by the fact that Vayiyu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar is part of the pasuk of Vayi b'shkan Yisrael ba'aretz hahi Vayelech Reuven. So really, anyone who says Reuven did not Avera is mistaken. Elama ani mekayem vayishkav es Bilhah pilegesh aviv. So what do I do with the pasuk that he lay with Bilhah? Shebilbel matsue shal aviv. He meddled, he mixed up the bed of his father. Umala olav akasav ki'ilu shachav iman. The Torah treats it as if he lay with her. So ein mikra yotze midei pshuta, except when it is ma'itze midei pshuta. So that's the pashup shot of the pasuk. Since the end of the pasuk is Vayu b'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar, that's telling you that it can't mean Vayishkav kim Vayishkav, because it says they were all equal, right? Okay, so we're always accustomed to learn that. What does it mean that he was maval utsu aviv? We're accustomed to learn, like Rashi says. What does Rashi say? That what happened here? That Rachel passed away. We know Rachel was the Akeres Habayis. Yaakov was stationed with Rachel. The meat of Yaakov was by Rachel. So when Rachel passed away, Reuven assumed that Yaakov would take the mita and put it in his mother's ohel, because his mother, after all, okay, she might not have been like Rachel, but she was on the higher rung in the totem pole than Bilhah and Zilpah. But what happened? When Rachel passed away, Yaakov took his mita and he put it in Bilhah's tent. And that was very insulting to Reuven. Reuven? I don't know. Doesn't say in the Torah. So Reuven took the bed and he put it in Leah's tent. So the fact that Reuven meddled around in the personal affairs of his father, it's not of Reuven's business where Yaakov puts the mita. The Torah considers it as if he was he had relations with Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv. That is the way most people understand the episode. After all, that's what Rashi says based on Chazal, that Reuven was mavalbel yitzue Aviv. Okay, I'm not here to tell you what you know already. I'm here today to tell you this is not what happened. This is not what occurred. And there are two ways of reading this pasuk, very revolutionary ways of reading this pasuk. And they come from a mafaresh that I'm pretty certain you never heard one thing that this individual said on Chumash. This is something you probably learned thousands of things that this Gadol Yisrael said, probably never something that this Gadol said on Chumash, because he didn't write a perush on Chumash, but we have a tradition about one particular perush that this Gadol said on Chumash, and here it goes. Okay, there are going to be two ways of learning it. The first one is going to come from Rabbi Ephraim, and these two ways of learning the pasuk are so exceptional that Reuven in Shamayim was so happy that somebody explained the pasuk in this way, that Reuven himself came down from Shamayim to give this Gadol B'Yisrael a big kiss. Okay? So if you behave today and you learn good, you never know, on the way home, you might meet Reuven. By the way, Reuven's yahrzeit is coming up this week. Reuven's yahrzeit is usually Parshas Vayishlach. So if you treat Reuven properly, you're mechabed Reuven, you never know, he might come and give you a big kiss. Okay? And he didn't only do it one time, he didn't only do it to one Gadol B'Yisrael. So let's see how it goes. Comes the Chidah, and the Chidah in no less than 5 different svarim. The Chidah brings down a pshat that's half of a fella, in the Sefer Maras Ha'ayin, that's the Chida's commentary on Shas. In the Kisei Rachamim, which is the Chida's Perish on Masechta Seifrim. In the Pnei David, which is the Chida's Perish on Chumash. In the Midbar Kedemos, which is the Chida's Encyclopedia. In the Rosh David, which is the Chida's Sefer of Drush, the Chidah brings down the following pshat. First, from the Rama, from none other than the Baal HaMappa himself. The Rama we know is called the Baal HaMappa. Right? Why is he called the Baal HaMappa? Because you have Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the set table, and the Rama wrote glasses on the set table, so he's called the tablecloth. The Baal HaMappa, right? The master of the tablecloth. Yeah? Okay, so the Chidah in Masechta Shabbos, what? The Rama did not write a Pirush on Chumash, he wrote a Pirush on the Zayar, he did not write a Pirush on Chumash. The Rama says like this, the Chidah says, I heard in the name of Moshe Isserlis, right? The Rama was born, this is Machlokes when the Rama was born, either 1539, 1530, or 1520. Probably 1520. He lived for 42 years. Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin. He's called Isserlin because his father was Rabbi Yisrael Isser. And he was a Talmud of the greatest Rosh Hashiva in Poland, the biggest Marbitz Torah in Poland, who was Rav Shalom Shachna. And then Rav Shalom Shachna took him as a son-in-law. In fact, Rav Meir Shapiro said that the greatest kever to go to in the entire European continent, nobody ever goes there, obviously, because everyone goes here and there. Nobody even knows this. What's the greatest kever to go to in Europe? Rav Shalom Shachna. Why? Most people, who's Rav Shalom Shachna? The Rama's father, who's the greatest Marbitz Torah in Poland. The reason is, the Chayzer Lublin said that all the neshamas of all the other Gedolim, they went to Eretz Yisrael, except Rav Shalom Shachna, who's the Marda Asra of Poland. He's watching over the city, Ad Yimais. So it's only kever that the Gadol's there. He says the only kever still in Europe that the Gadol is still there. In fact, when Rav Meir Shapiro became Rav of Lublin, he had to go ask Rishus by the kever of Shalom Shachna. It's in Lublin. Anyway, so the Chidah brings down from the Rama that when the Rama said this pshat, Reuven came and he was machzakim toiva. He said thank you, he gave him a shkoyach. Not only that, Rabbeinu Ephraim, when he said his pshat, that we're about to see, Reuven also came and he gave him a yashikach. So first let's start with the pshat of the Rabbeinu Ephraim. Rabbeinu Ephraim says like this. Now the Chidah, in his Sefer Kisei Rachamim, by the way, the Chidah adds, Reuven's been up there in the Gane Eden for hundreds and hundreds of years. So you see that he's listening in Gane Eden to what they say about him, and he appreciates if you explain the episode in the proper way. Because it's a little like the Gemara says, we can't be matargim the episode, because it's the genus of Reuven. But apparently, even though the Gemara says, V'hamesim einam yoidim me'uma, Reuven particularly is very attentive to how we darshan these psukim. Okay? So that's the Chidah writes, if you look at number 8, the Rama writes, Mekan yilmoid musar, shahagam sheyesh kama me'eshanim, sheruven v'gan Eden, that even though Reuven's in Gan Eden for hundreds of years, im kozeh hayoloi nachas ruach, he has a lot of pleasure. Shaharav achosid, the Rama was doiresh b'shvachai. So now, Rabbis, we're going to start with the parish of Rabbeinu Ephraim. It's quoted in the number 10 in the Pnei David at the end of the piece, and we have the original on number 23, and that is Rabbeinu Ephraim reads a pasuk like this: Vayihi bishkoin Yisrael. 23. And it's in number 23. Rabbeinu Ephraim is in number 3, and it's quoted by the Chidah in number 10, the end of the piece. He says, V'achar zman roisi b'sefer chidushe hagershuni daf lamed tesam beis, who says in the name of the Rama, of the Atabaliyadi, Perish Rabbeinu Ephraim, you read the pasuk like this. You ready for this? Watch this. Vayihi bishkoin Yisrael. And it was when Yaakov was living Baratz Ahi. Vayelech Reuven. And Reuven ran away from home. Why? Because Vayishkav es Bilhah. Because he lived with Bilhah. Who was Bilhah? Pilegesh, a concubine. Who lived with him? Her? Aviv, her father. You hear this reading? Vayhi b'shkoin Yisrael. Yaakov was living there. What happened to Reuven? Vayishlach Reuven. Reuven ran away from home. Why did Reuven run away from home? Because he was insulted. Why was he insulted? Because Vayishkav es Bilhah. Because he lived with Bilhah. Pilegesh. Bilhah was a Pilegesh. Who lived with her? Aviv. His father lived with her. And Reuven didn't like the fact that Yaakov was living with Bilhah. He should have been living with Leah. So what did Reuven do? He was insulted, so he ran away. According to this, what did Reuven do wrong? Nothing. He didn't do anything wrong. He ran away. He didn't chas v'shalom. He didn't go near Bilhah. He didn't even touch Yaakov's bed. He ran away. But because he was insulted, now here's the thing. Because he was insulted that Yaakov Avinu did not live with his mother, so that interrupted Yaakov Avinu for the night. And because of that, we'll see what happened. Now what does it mean by B'nei Yaakov Shnei Masar? Vayishma Yisrael. Yaakov heard that Reuven ran away. So what do you do if the kid runs away? You bring him back. Now there are 12 kids, not 11. Yeah, last night there were 11. When Reuven ran away, there were 11. Now there are 12 kids. Who says this? Kemat all the Rishonim. Rabbeinu Ephraim, if you look over here, now not the Rishonim that we're familiar with, but if you look at number 3, Rabbeinu Ephraim says this, one of the German, the old Chachmei Ashkenaz, and the Paneach Raza, and the Moshav Zakenim, and the Tur, and Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. So you have 5 Rishonim that all learn this way. That again, Yaakov was living in that land. Vayelech Reuven, Reuven went. Why? Because he was insulted that Yaakov went with Bilhah. Vayishkav es Bilhah, because he lay with Bilhah. Who? Who's Bilhah? A Pilegesh. Who laid with her? Aviv. Vayishma Yisrael.
When you wife goes to Yeshuva, Reuven is busy with Yeshuva, we say later always, I lost my father. How do you say all that later? What do you Yeshuva?
At the end of the day, he shouldn't have been insulted. Don't be insulted because your father. Why are you insulted? People think, it's not my fault, I can't control my emotions, That's how God, you have to control your emotions. You have to control your feelings. What are you being, you're insulted, why are you insulted? Because he should have lived with my mother. It's none of your business what Yaakov Avinu should do. Yeah, I have a right to, people say, I'm also a person, I have a right to be insulted. You don't have a right to be insulted. Who told you have? There's a Mishnah about Metzia, Yesh l'cha of terumose. You have a right to have terumose. That means whenever the Mishnah doesn't say you have a right to have terumose, you're not to have terumose. Rabbi Sol Salanter says whether you could have terumos on somebody is halacha. Sometimes halacha lets you have terumos, sometimes not. Reuven should not have had terumos, but lamaisa, to say he was vayishkav, to say he was maval, no, that's not what happened. This is how Rabbeinu Ephraim and the Moshav Zakenim and the Paneach Raza and the Tur and Rabbi Yehuda Chassid learned the pasuk. But Rabbi said there's another way to learn the pasuk. This is the way that the Rama was megala to us, the proper reading of this pasuk. Again, as we mentioned, I'm not familiar with any other perush on Chumash that we know from the Rama. We know many things the Rama said on halacha, but a perush on the pasuk, I'm not familiar. If you show me another one, then there's another one. But I'm not familiar with any other one. But says, what? Who? No, there are only 12, and there were 11 in the house. Now he brought them back. Now they're back 12 in the house. He's still
12 here now.
Yeah, now right. The Bnei Yaakov here are still 12.
Five other sons of Leah. Why didn't they react?
Reuven's the oldest of Leah. So Reuven took up the cause of his mother. Okay. No, he didn't. No, when they asked Reuven, what are you doing? I'm just walking away. Where are you going? I'm just going. What his kavanah was, but he walked out. Yeah. Okay. But the Rama himself said a different pshat. And this is a pshat that the Chida writes, I heard from a Rav Gadol Ashkenazi, that he has a tradition from his Rabbeim all the way back to the Rama, the Balamapa. By the way, the Chida says in number 10, that when Rabbeinu Ephraim said this pshat b'Rabbim, Reuven, he had a dream, and Reuven kissed him in a dream. Okay, so tonight, try to remember what kind of chalomis you have. You never know. Okay, but comes the Rama, quoted in the Chida, and the Rama says in number 9 and in many others, the Rama says like this: Vayehi b'shkoin Yisrael ba'aretz hahi. And it was when Yaakov Avinu was living in that place. Vayelech Reuven, and Reuven went. Where did Reuven go? Nowhere. He was walking outside of Yaakov's room. He was walking by Yaakov's door. Now that night, Yaakov had put his mita by Bilhah. But he was walking by, back and forth, and Vayishkav es Bilhah. When was he walking? When he was going to live with Bilhah. Who's Bilhah? Pilegesh. Who was going to live with Bilhah? Aviv. So Reuven was walking by the door when Yaakov was going to live with Bilhah. Vayishma Yisrael, and Yaakov heard. And because Yaakov heard, he had to be Poresh. Why do you have to be Poresh? Because b'shas zivug, if people are makir, then you can't do it. So therefore Yaakov refrained. So what did Reuven do wrong? Reuven was not shachav and Bilhah. Reuven was not maval bel utsu Bilhah. What did Reuven do? All he did was Vayishlach. He walked outside of Yaakov's room. And Yaakov heard the pitter-patter. And Yaakov was Poresh. And that was what Reuven did. But it says Vayishkav? No, Vayiu b'nei Yaakov shnei masar. All Reuven did was he walked by the door. Again, you read the pasuk like this. Vayi b'shkoin Yisrael ba'aretz hahi. When Yaakov was living there. Vayelech Reuven. Reuven was walking by. When? Vayishkav es Bilhah. When someone was going to live with Bilhah. Who's Bilhah? Pilegesh. Who was going to live with her? Aviv. When Reuven's father was going to live with him. Not that Reuven was going to be shoichev and Bilhah Pilegesh Aviv. But Reuven was Vayelech. When? Vayishkav es Bilhah Pilegesh. Who was being shachav? Aviv. That's how the Rama learns. The Chida quotes it in number 9 in the Kisei Rachamim. He quotes it in number 10 in the Pnei David. If you look in the Midbar Kedema, it's in number 11. Rabbeinu Ephraim, Koser Sharava Chosid, Darash Lazakis Reuven, Perish Vahi, Bishkoin Yisrael, Gam Shamati Shagoin, the Rama was Mazakeh Reuven. Here he just says that the Rama came to the defense of Reuven. But back in number 10, here the Rama spells it out clearer, that the Rama, the Baal HaMappa, was mafarish Yaakov hoyoroitza lishkav es Bilhah pilag shoy v'neskane Reuven. Reuven was just hoyolech uba etza cheder amitais v'asur l'shamesh boid sheish miyadam shoymin. Right, one is now to have relations of people here. Yaakov heard, so he had to be Poresh, and therefore he was not he couldn't be moiled that night. By the way, I'll just add one nakuda that the Ben Ish Chai adds in a tshuva. And the Malbim also mentions this in his Parshas Torah, quoting the Arizal and the Sefer HaLikutim. That the truth is, how many Shvatim were there supposed to be? There were supposed to be 13 Shvatim. Actually, there's supposed to be 14 Shvatim. And what happened was, that night, that Yaakov went into Bilhah, who were supposed to be conceived? Menashe and Ephraim. And from Shamayim already, they already emptied out the container of neshamas. What's the name of the container of neshamas in Shamayim? Guf. Right? Very good. The Gemara in Yevamah says, Ein ben David vash yichlaka neshamas shebeguf. Guf. They already, Menashe and Ephraim came down. So they were ready to go into the union of Yaakov and Bilhah. But because Reuven was walking by the door, Yaakov had to be Poresh, so Menashe and Ephraim could not be born then. That's what the pasuk means. Vayelech Reuven, Vayishkav es Aviv. Vayush b'nei Yaakov shnei masar. Now there are only 12 sons of Yaakov, but really there should have been 14 sons of Yaakov. Says the Arizal, says the Malbim, says the Ben Ish Chai. Really there should have been 14 sons. That's the pshat. Menashe v'Ephraim Reuven v'Shimon Yuli. You ever wonder why are Menashe and Ephraim considered like the sons of Yaakov Avinu? They're grandchildren. What's their yichus that of all the grandchildren, Yaakov Avinu had dozens of grandchildren. Why only Menashe and Ephraim are considered like the sons of Yaakov? The answer is because they were supposed to be the sons of Yaakov. Even spiritually, their neshamas had already come down. So the Ben Ish Chai writes from the Arizal that the neshamas already came down because Yaakov was about to be mezavig, but because they couldn't, they were shifted off to Mitzrayim to Eshes Yosef. Okay, so that's the pshat. Reuven interfered with Yaakov and Bilhah, therefore there were only 12 sons of Yaakov. Okay, let's move on further. What? Good question. I'm not up to that part yet. Okay, we're going to get to that.
If there will be punctuation, then we have a chat.
We're going to get to it. We're just starting. Okay, so now this is the pshat that the Chidah brings down from the Rama. What's the original source of this pshat? In other words, who is the first to report that the Rama in fact said this drasha that Vayelech Reuven doesn't mean Vayelech Reuven Vayishkav, but Vayelech Reuven was just pitter pattering at the zman that Vayishkav is Pilegesh. When Yaakov was living with Pilegesh, who was living? Aviv. This is brought from one of the Kadmonim. The name of this Kadmon is, it's in the Sefer Chidushei HaGershuni. The Chidushei HaGershuni, he wrote the Avodas HaGershuni. He wrote Tiferes HaGershuni. He wrote Chidushei HaGershuni. He was the Rabbi of Rav David Oppenheim. And, he had a very wealthy Jew. He had one of the most extensive libraries in the world. He was born in Germany. He was nifter in Metz in 1693. He was a Talmud of the Maram Shif. And then he went to learn in Krakow under the Bachra, the Rebbe Reb Heschel, and the Tzemach Tzedek. Okay, be it as it may, he writes, look at number 12 in the Chidushei HaGershuni, he writes, L'fi Shamati, B'Shem Hagoin, Morenu, Harav Moshe Isserlis, Shaya Mefaresh, Vayishkav Reuven es Bilhah, similar to what Chazal say by the Bnei Eli, that they Vayishkavun es Hanoshim. Right? How do Chazal interpret by Bnei Eli Vayishkavun es Hanoshim? They delayed bringing the kina, the birds of women who gave birth, and therefore he delayed them from Peri Verivya. So therefore, the Gemara says it's considered as if they had relations with these nashim. So to by Reuven, when it says they were movable utsu aviv, that means they came into the. That just means chas v'shalom, not that Reuven had relations with Bilhah. He wasn't even movable the mita, but he was just walking by the door, and Yaakov heard. Says Chidushei HaGershuni. Okay, so now you're going back to the 17th century. He says, V'shamati shedemostayuknoi shel Reuven nizgal eloi. By the way, that's more than what the Chidah says. Chidah says he saw him in a dream. Reuven came to him in a dream. Here, the Chidushei HaGershuni, which is going back a few hundred years, says the demos of Reuven came to the Rama, and he gave him a yasher koyach that he was malamed zchus. By the way, Rabbi Yosef Shalolevi Natanzan, the Shalom Eshiv, in Parshas Vayishlach, quotes this Avodas HaGershuni, and as a accurate and definitive reading of the pasuk. The Steichemed, however, in the Michtav L'Chizkiyahu, on Masechta Rosh Hashanah, he brings down a story that there was a machlokes between a bunch of Talmidei Chachamim in Yerushalayim. How do you interpret this pasuk? One said you learn it this way. One Talmid Chacham says you learn it that way. And a child was passing by, and Ad Sha'amad Talmid Katan Kvar Shis Kvar Sheva, a little kid was passing by. He was 6-7 years old, and they asked him, how do you interpret the pasuk? And he said over this pshat, he says, "V'hershu v'amar de Reuven hayimitzayer betchila amitas aviv." When it was put ba'oyo Rachel, not ba'oyo Leah, and when Rachel died, he went to see, and he was passing by the door, and because of that, he interfered with his father. So this is the pshat that this kid said. And what happened? It brought over here that Reuven revealed himself in a dream, and Reuven swore that this is Taka the pshat. Now the Steichemed says that in his opinion, this is a very far-fetched pshat in the pasuk. But the Sefer Megadim Chadash says, why is it so far-fetched? The Chidah feels that this is a definitive pshat. Chidah quotes it no less than 5 times, and Rabbi Yosef Shalolevi Natanzan quotes it, and therefore our tradition is that this is a valid pshat. By the way, the Megadim Chadashim adds that in the Steichemed's report of the story, he doesn't say who Reuven revealed himself to. But others bring down the story that Reuven came to this child who said over the pshat, Reuven actually came to this child. Okay, so here we go, Rabbi say. Back to the original question. Why is there an open space in this pasuk of Vayhi b'shkoin Yisrael ba'aretz hahi, Vayelech Reuven, Vayishkav es bila pilegesh aviv, Vayishma Yisrael, and then pause, Vayu b'nei Yaakov shnei masar. Why is there open space? Well, says the Ben Ish Chai. The truth is, if you look in the Medrash on Parshas Nasai, the Medrash seems to say that the reason why there's an open space in the pasuk is because when the brothers got wind of what Reuven did, they weren't happy with him. This is none of your business what the Tata does. Why are you meddling? Why are you pitter-pattering? And the pasuk has a richuk because they were merachek Reuven. The brothers were merachek Reuven. But the open space, says the Ben Ish Chai, is for a different reason. It's a parsha psucha to indicate the fact that despite the fact that the brothers were not happy with Reuven, but Yadav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu was psucha lekabel shavim. That Hashem's hands were open to accept Reuven b'tshuva. After all, we know that Reuven was busy b'sakoy v'tanisai, and the opening in this pasuk indicated that even immediately after, Hashem's hands were psucha lekabel the tshuva of Reuven. That is what the Ben Ish Chai says. The Medrash is mashma that the pasuk is open, representing Yadav Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu psucha lekabel shavim. But says the Ben Ish Chai, in my humble opinion, there's a different reason why there's an opening in the pasuk. Ready for this? The difference is, you know why there's a hefsek in the parsha? To be made that the correct interpretation of this pasuk is like the Rama. That in fact, Reuven was not shachav, and in fact, Reuven was not maval. All Reuven did was he was mafsik. He was mafsik. He interrupted his father. How do we know that? The fact that there's a hefsek in the middle of the pasuk. The reason why there's a hefsek in the middle of the pasuk is to indicate that the definitive way to learn this pasuk is that all Reuven did was piska be'emtza pasuk. He just interrupted his father.
But interruption was not.
Could be everybody knew it, and the Rama recorded it. That's the pshat. By the way, the Chida brings as a haktama to this whole idea of Chuvas Harashba that the gadlus of the Gemara is the Gemara doesn't tell us everything. The Gemara says generalities, but the Gemara often hides from us the real story. The Chida in number 9 writes, he quotes, "Va'ani ani tamid beinena." I am in poverty. It's always between my eyes. What the Raja writes in a tshuva, to me chachmas balei Talmud lamadnu kama dvarim b'shtika. The Chachmei HaGemara very often are silent about things, and they're not megalatas. It doesn't mean they don't hold of it or don't agree with it, but rather they are not megalatas. The Rama was megalatas. By the way, this pshat is attributed to the Rama. Other Sfarim attributed to the Megala Amukais. Okay, if you look at number 18, the Sefer Yafeh, Yafeach Leketz Yafeh, he brings it in the name of the Megala Amukais, and others bring in the name of the Megala Amukais, and the Megadim Chadashim says that he's not sure if both the Rama and the Megala Amukais said it, and the Rama Taka kissed, and the Reuven kissed both of them. Meaning, did Reuven actually come down and kiss both the Rama and the else? Or he says it's very likely only the Rama said it, and some Sarim got mixed up with the Galmukas. They were all both Rabbanim in Krakow. So definitely this Perush emanated from Krakow. Likely it comes to Rama. Others attribute it to the Megala Mukas as well. So I ask you a kasha. Are you ready for this? Very nice. This is a beautiful pshat in the Rama. Nachama. Vayhi v'shkoin Yisrael b'aretz hahi. Yaakov was living in that land. Vayelech Reuven, and Reuven went. What did Reuven do? Either Rabbeinu Ephraim says he ran away, or he was walking outside the door. When? Vayishkav es Bila. When he lay with Bila. Who's Bila? pilegesh. Hule aviv. Here's the problem. Onkelos doesn't learn this way. Onkelos clearly learns the Pashup Pshat in the Gemara. Because Onkelos says, V'havakad Shra Yisrael Ba'arahi. Yaakov was living in that land. Va'azal Reuven. Reuven went. Ushechiv and he lay in Bila, with Bila, L'chei nasa da'avui. Bila was the concubine of his father. The Targum translates Aviv not as Yaakov, but da'avui. So they asked the Rebbe Reb Shmelka that the Targum is against the Rama and the Targum is Misinai. Says the Rebbe Reb Shmelka, that's why this is the one pasuk in Chumash. We don't say the Targum. Why? Because the Rama is right, and this is not the actual pshat. This is just a translation, but this is not pshat in the pasuk. The pshat in the pasuk is like the Rama. This is it's brought down in the Sefer Shemen HaTov from the Rebbe Rosh Shmelach of Nikolsburg and the Torah Sechir Rabbi Kiva Yosef Schlesinger. Also, the Chidah brings down that this is the reason why this pasuk we don't say the Targum, because the Targum Taka is not like the Rama. The real pshat that happened is what the Rama says. The Targum is just a translation. So when it comes to this episode, so as not to be Mavazer Reuven, we don't read the translation of the pasuk. Take a look at number 20. Vayilach Reuven, Vayishkav es Bila Pilegesh Aviv. Mi haya hashoichev? Aviv. So what did Reuven do wrong? Reuven loichata klal, rak shabil yitzu aviv. V'shaloi setamad echad. What do you do with the Targum? Says the Rebbe Shmalka, Mice Oruvane nikra v'lei metargim. We don't read the Targum on it. And he also in the Sefer Torah Sichiel.
Well, Targum is a Tana, no?
Yeah, so it's not that the Targum is wrong, it's just the Targum is saying the literal meaning. But that's not really what happened. That's the translation of the pasuk. In other words, the avera that we consider it akin to is Vayishkav es Bila. Meaning it's ki'ilu he did that. But that's not really what happened. Now one of the Einaklach of the Rama was Rabbi Ephraim Zalman Margolius, who was a contemporary of the Chassam Sofer. So he brings down, he was in shul one day, and the rabbi got up, and he says, Pshat, you wouldn't believe it. Everybody thinks that Reuven went and into Yaakov's room, and he was maval mitas Yaakov. That's not really what happened. Reuven was just walking by the door. Ephraim Zalman says, I was listening to this rabbi. So what kind of drush is that? It's like one of these things that rabbis say. Well, it's exaggerated, Rabbi Ephraim Zalman said. This is one of these things, he says, that I thought that, Darshanim have a certain license to keep people's attention. But this is not a real pshat. He said, until I found the Sefer Avodas HaGershuni, who quotes that he heard in the name of the Rama, that the Rama Taka said this pshat. Listen to what Rav Ephraim Zalman says we learn from here. He says, "V'darash v'zachornisha used to megamgem b'zeh. It's a derech guzma. Harbe darshanim dorshim l'shabech tzadikim," and it doesn't make any sense. He says, "V'chazu man gavra rabba kamasid alav de milsa sheshamakein. V'amarti, I learned from here, al tehi maflig l'chol davar. Never throw anything away. In other words, never dismiss anything. Don't dismiss anything. You never know. Maybe it's taka true. Maybe the shortcoming falls with me, he says. That's what I learned from this particular episode. Okay. So, bearing this in mind, Rabbi Sai, this revolutionary pshat in the pasuk, that Vayelech Reuven, all Reuven did was he was Vayelech. At the time that Vayishkav es Bila Pilegesh, Aviv. We're going to now segue into the second subject of the Shiur, connected, and then we're going to come full circle. The Gemara says in Masechta Saita that if we have a woman who's accused of adultery, and we say, you didn't know, what'd you do? I didn't do anything. What do you mean? Your husband warned you, don't go into seclusion. You might want to admit, greater people than you have done worse things and admitted your crime, so maybe you want to admit. And the Gemara says, like who do we drum up? Like Yehuda was Maida, the Gemara says. And the Gemara asks, where did Yehuda learn to be Maida for wrongdoing? The Gemara says he learned it from Reuven. Excuse me. The Gemara says Reuven also was Moedeh. Where did Reuven learn it from? Reuven learned it from Yehuda. Paskins the Rambam. Get a load of this. We want to break the woman down. We want to scare her. So she says, no, bring my husband. I need my husband to stand next to me. Saying, now you like your husband all of a sudden. Now you want your husband? We don't allow the husband to stand next to her. We get to the Beis Nagon Yerushalayim, and we scare the living daylights out of her. We say, your husband can't come. Umafchidim Oisa number 30, Pachad Gadol. Shaloi Tishta. We don't want her to drink the waters. We say, lady, wine could do bad things to you. Laughter could do bad things. Maybe you were influenced by other people. Don't drink the waters. You're going to be erasing the name of Hashem. We say many great people before you have been destroyed. We have many great people who were Moedeh. And we tell her the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Umase Reuven bepilegesh aviv al pashtoi. And we tell her the Pashat story of Reuven and Bilhah. We say that Reuven lived with Bilhah. And he was Moedeh. So in order to scare a saita, now by the way, the Rambam spells Hilchos Saita very interestingly. With a sin, not with a samach. Yeah? And the Rambam paskins, Mice Oruvane bepilegesh aviv al pashtoi. Says the Kesef Mishnah. Umashikazav al pashtoi koloimar. Dechsiv Vayishka Reuven es Bilhah pilegesh aval fi ha'emes chas v'shalom eloimar kain. It's not really what happened. He never lived with his mother, with his stepmother, but we tell her that to get her to be Moedeh. What do you call that? Maitzi Shemra. Here you have a big tzaddik, Reuven. He's a bigger tzaddik than anyone you know. And we make up a lie about him to get a saita to be Moedeh. Why? So as not to erase the name of Hashem. That's the halach in the Rama. Comes the Rama. She's also a very chashuv lady. Comes the Rama. And the Rama, in the Shas Tshuvas Rama, talks about the following story. There was a big disaster in a certain city. There was a big controversy. Politics. And the only way to calm down the city and to create shalim is if we make up a maisa about a chash of a person, we can make up a story, and now we'll put the matter to rest. Are you allowed to be moitzi shemra? They asked the Rama. L'man hashalom. To be moitzi shemra on a Talmud Chacham, l'man hashalom.
An existing Talmud.
Paskins Rama mutter. You're allowed to be moitzi shemra on a Talmud Chacham, l'man hashalom. The haraya, Reuven. Because what's more chashuv, shalom or erasing the name of Hashem? Shalom. Because we'll erase the name of Hashem, l'man hashalom. So shalom is greater than erasing the name of Hashem. So makes the Ramah the following cheshbon. If we're allowed to be moitzi shemra on Reuven, so as not to erase the name of Hashem, certainly you should be able to be moitzi shemra on a Talmud Chacham, l'man hashalom. Because since shalom has more value than mechikas Hashem, shalom is more important than erasing Hashem's name. So if you're allowed to be moitzi shemra on Reuven, so as not to be moichik the Shem Hashem, certainly you're allowed to be moitzi shemra on a Talmud Chacham, l'man hashalom. Comes the Heilige Yismach Moshe, also the Emek Bracha of Aryeh Pomeranchik. Now the Yismach Moshe was an Enikol of the Ramah as well. And he says, the Mechilas Kvoi Toirasai of my Heilige Zayda. I don't know what the Ramah's raya is. Why? He says like this. He says, V'achar hareses v'hara'ada mitayrasai shal zakeni rabbeinu agad bal hamapa. I have a kasha on the Ramah. If somebody speaks lashon hara about a tzaddik who's not alive, is it an aveira in the Torah? No. What do you mean lashon hara? Lashon hara is only on Jews. Once a person leaves this world, they're not Bechlal Yisrael anymore. La Mesim Chavshi. There's no Isra Lashon Hara on Mesim. It's a Cherem Kadmoinim not to speak Lashon Hara on someone who passed away. But there's no Lavda Irais of Lashon Hara. There's no Moitzi Shemra on Mesim. La Mesim Chavshin. It's only Bechlal, only a Yid. Once somebody passes on, they're not Bechlal Amisecha. There's no Isser Lashon Hara on Mesim. It's a cherem of the Rishonim not to speak Lashon Hara about Mesim. It's not an Isser D'Oraisa. Frek the Yismach Moshe, frek the A'imek Bracha. How could the Rama make a Kal V'chomer if you're allowed to be Moitzi Shemra on Reuven in order not to erase Hashem's name? Certainly you're allowed to be Moitzi Shemra on a Talmud Chacham for Shalim. Says there the Yismach Moshe, says the Rav Aryeh Pomeranchik, Avada Shalim is greater than Mechikas Hashem, but you can't bring a raya from Reuven because Reuven's not alive. And the Gemara says, you know why you're allowed to speak Lashon Hara on Mesim? Because it doesn't bother them. They're not sensitive to it.
He's alive, he came to kiss him.
They're not they don't care what you say about them, the Yismach Moshe says. They don't pay attention to what's going on in this world. So how could the Rama make a Kal V'chomer that if you could be Moitzi Shemra on Reuven, you could be Moitzi Shemra on a Talmud Chacham L'man HaShalayim? Can't make a Kal V'chomer from a mess. A mess is not the Gemara. The Gemara says in Brachas, Kol HaMesaper Achar HaMeis K'Mesaper Achar HaEben. The Gemara says, Diyadu V'lo Yichbalu. They don't care what you say about them. So I saw in the Sefer, Megadim Chadashim, he says, very cute. He says, that might be true by other tzaddikim, they don't care what you say about them. But clearly, Reuven is very sensitive to what we're saying about him, Ba'olam Hazeh. The Haraya, he came to kiss the Rama, he came to kiss Rabbeinu Ephraim, he might even have kissed the Megal HaMukos. We're not sure if he did it b'chaloim, or b'hakitz, or b'dmusai, but Reuven is very sensitive. So it could be then the Rama, l'shitasei, who is doiresh l'shvach of Reuven, that Reuven never did anything wrong. Reuven merely was Vayishlach and then interfered with Yaakov. So, and Rama knew that Reuven is paying careful attention to what we say then. So Rama says, so let's make a Kal V'chomer. If you could be Moitzi Shemra on Reuven, even though Reuven is sensitive to what we're saying about him, like the Chida even said that in number 8, Hagam sheish kama meir shanim sheruven began eden im kol zeh havlei nachas ruach, that the Rama is dorish l'shvachai. So perhaps then the Rama is entitled to make this Kal V'chomer. This is more al pi drush, al pi halacha l'chor. It's a very good kasha what the Kal V'chomer is from Reuven. But nevertheless, I think what we learn from here is that two really innovative ways of reading this pasuk, different than the way we usually see in Rashi, and that is not Vayilech Reuven Vayishkav, but all Reuven did was either he ran away or he was taking footsteps by the door, and that's why there's a piska be'emsa the pasuk to indicate all he did was he interrupted. But ultimately, Vayu b'nei Yaakov shnei masar, that all the shvatim mitasei shlema, they were all tzadikim. And that's why this pasuk we read, but we're not metargim, because the targum is not consistent with all of these limud zuchos for Reuven. Rabbi Sai, have a great day.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.